A single pair of hands is sewing a line of tiny stitches into pale leather. No music, no dialogue, just the sound of thread pulling through skin. The camera slowly pulls back, and that random piece of leather turns out to be the steering wheel of a Bentley Continental GT. Right beside it, the winged bee glints under the studio lights. That is the moment you realize this car didn't roll off an ordinary factory line. It was built almost like a bespoke suit by real people over 400 hours stretched across 6 weeks. And that number, 400 hours, is not a marketing slogan. It's the reality inside a very specific building in a very ordinary-looking town, Crewe, in northwest England. From the outside, it looks like another industrial complex. Inside, it's something between a high-tech lab and an old-world craft school. 4,000 people come here every day, and instead of trying to churn out millions of cars, they focus on something more obsessive, about 11,000 Bentleys a year. Do the math. That's not a production line, that's a waiting list with wheels. The story of the Crewe factory doesn't start with leather and champagne, it starts with war. The site opened in 1938, and its first job was to build Rolls-Royce airplane engines for World War II. Imagine the pressure. Engines you're building today might be flying over enemy territory next week. That spirit of engineering as a life-and-death craft seeped into the bricks. After the war, instead of shutting down, the plant reinvented itself. The skills that once built Merlin engines and other power plants started building luxury cars carrying the names Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Same buildings, different kind of power. Today, those wartime roots still echo through the place. You see it in the way tools are stored, in the discipline of the production flow, in the way people talk about tolerances and specs with almost military precision. But somewhere along the line, the factory also became an art studio. Because here's the wild thing. In an age where most car factories are forests of robotic arms, Crewe famously uses two robots. They even have names, Romeo and Juliet, and they're allowed to do exactly one job, apply adhesive around the windscreen. Everything else that makes a Bentley, that's human. So let's walk through this place, step by step, and see how a Bentley Continental GT is actually born. Not the glossy showroom version, the real, messy, painstaking, terrifyingly precise version. The journey starts with something that used to be alive: leather. When you open a Bentley door and see the seats, the dashboard, the door panels, you're not just looking at interior trim. You're looking at an entire herd of carefully chosen animals. A single Continental GT can use the hides of up to 16 European bulls for its interior. If you step up to something like the Bentayga EWB, the extended wheelbase SUV, that number can climb to 17 hides for one vehicle. Bentley doesn't just grab random leather from wherever it's cheapest, they source from high-altitude Scandinavian ranches. It sounds fancy, but there's a dead practical reason: fewer insects. Up in cooler climates, mosquitoes and other pests are less of a problem, which means fewer bite marks, scars, and imperfections. Fewer blemishes on the animals means cleaner, smoother hides for your seats and steering wheel. The luxury starts before the leather even leaves the pasture. Inside the leather workshop, the hides arrive as huge sheets. They're spread out under bright, unforgiving lights. A trained leather worker walks slowly around them, pen or digital marker in hand, inspecting every centimeter. This is not a job a machine can do well. They're looking for tiny scars, stretch marks, holes, insect bites, anything that might ruin the surface of a finished panel. Usable sections get outlined, flawed parts get rejected. Only then does the process move on to the machines. Lasers take over for the cutting stage. Once the best zones have been marked, cutting heads trace outlines for seat panels, door inserts, headrest, and all the other shapes that will wrap around the interior. The advantage of lasers is repeatability. Each piece is cut to exactly the same size over and over, which is crucial when you're assembling something as complex as a quilted seat or a multi-piece door panel. But don't confuse that precision with mass production. These pieces are destined for very particular hands. Because the stitching? That's where the robots step aside and the people step in. In most mainstream car factories, stitching is either outsourced or handled largely by machines. Not here. At Crewe, the majority of leather stitching is done by hand or on hand-guided machines. Craftspeople spend years mastering techniques, not just to sew, but to sew in a way that remains perfectly consistent across curves, seams, and different thicknesses of leather. They're not just joining pieces, they're shaping how those pieces will look and feel for decades. One of the most charming little secrets of the entire factory lives on the steering wheel. You would assume that each stitch around the wheel grip is measured by a computer program or a laser pattern. Instead, Bentley uses something hilariously low-tech: a regular table fork. Yes, a fork. A worker takes the leather that will wrap the wheel, presses the fork gently into it, and uses the tiny dents left by the tines to mark out where the stitches will go. Those fork marks are spaced exactly 4 millimeters apart. That 4-millimeter rhythm, repeated all the way around, is why the stitching looks impossibly uniform when the wheel is finished. It's Michelin star craftsmanship with kitchen drawer tools. When those steering wheels are finally wrapped, stitched, and pulled tight around their frames, another ritual starts: the feel test. Workers grip them, twist them, and check for any give or creaking. The same happens with seats and armrests. They're pushed, squeezed, and even listened to. If an armrest squeaks when you lean on it, that's a fail. If the foam compresses in a way that feels uneven, that's a fail. In a world where most of us are used to plastic interiors that buzz and rattle, this level of nitpicking is what creates that famous Bentley feel when you shut the door and sit down. And we haven't even touched the colors yet. Bentleys can be ordered in a wide range of leather shades: deep reds, creamy linens, icy pale blues, rich chocolate browns, classic blacks, and more. On top of that, customers can specify contrast stitching, piping, embroidery, and two-tone schemes. That means the craftspeople in the leather shop don't just master one material, but many. Some hides stretch more, some are firmer, some show marks more easily. Each combination of color and grain changes how the leather behaves under the needle and in the car. Now, as your nose fills with that new Bentley leather smell, something else is working in the background to complete the cabin's personality: wood. If the leather workshop feels like a luxury upholstery studio, the veneer shop feels like a high-end furniture or instrument maker. Bentley starts with raw logs of carefully chosen wood, often walnut, but also other species depending on the customer's preferences. These logs are sliced into thin sheets called leaves, each just a few tenths of a millimeter thick. Crucially, those leaves are cut in sequence from the same log, like pages coming off a book. Why? So they can be book matched. Book matching is the art of taking two consecutive slices, flipping one over like you're opening a book, and placing them side by side so the grain on each panel mirrors the other. The result is a perfectly symmetrical pattern. In a Bentley, that means the veneer on the left of the dashboard mirrors the veneer on the right. Door trims on each side echo each other. The grain flows across the cabin like a reflected wave. It's subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Those veneer leaves are fragile. Craftspeople glue them onto sturdier backing panels, then carefully trim and sand them to fit complex shapes. Sweeping dashboards, curved center consoles, wraps around the door handles. If a piece cracks or the grain doesn't line up just so, it can be scrapped and done again. Perfection is not optional. Then comes the lacquer. This isn't a quick spray and dry job. Bentley lays down 7 layers of clear lacquer over the wood. Each layer needs time to cure. Between coats, the surface is sanded smooth by hand. The goal is not just shine, it's depth. When the final coat is polished, you don't just see a glossy surface. You see into the wood, like looking through still water at the grain beneath. Under bright lights, the veneer throws back clean reflections of the workshop around it. That's what they mean by a mirror finish. For special orders, this woodshop also becomes an art studio. Customers can request different species of wood, dual-tone combinations, or intricate marquetry inlays depicting everything from skyline silhouettes to logos and crests. Those pieces are built by cutting and fitting tiny sections of different veneers together like a jigsaw puzzle, then finishing them in the same multi-layer lacquer process. It's time-consuming and wildly unforgiving, but it's also how a Bentley interior ends up feeling more like a private lounge than a car. While all this quiet, detailed work is happening in the leather and wood rooms, a very different kind of craft is underway elsewhere in Crewe, building the engine. The Bentley Continental GT is famous for its 6.0-liter twin-turbo W12 engine. It's a strange configuration. Think of it as two narrow V6 engines fused together. The result is a powerhouse that can deliver around 626 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque, with a silky smoothness that feels almost unreal. But the really special thing isn't just what it can do in the car, it's how it's made. In many modern factories, engines move down a conveyor and each worker adds one or two parts before sending it on. At Crewe, the W12 is assembled by a single technician from start to finish. One person, one engine. They spend around 9 hours putting it together manually, following an exact sequence. Blocks and heads are joined, turbochargers are fitted, oil and coolant passages are sealed, fasteners are torqued to specific values, often checked and logged by digital tools. At the end of that process, the engine isn't just a lump of metal, it's a piece of personal responsibility. The technician attaches a small metal badge to the engine with their name on it. That badge might never be seen by the owner, but it's there quietly saying, "I built this, I stand behind it." It's an old-school mentality in a world that's mostly moved on to anonymous assembly. Before that W12 ever finds its way into a car, it's tested. Sensors check for leaks, parameters are measured, the builder hears it run, feels the vibrations, and signs it off. Only then does the engine move across to join the rest of the car. Meanwhile, in another part of the factory, a different kind of miracle is happening. One that most people will never think about: the installation of the wiring harness. If the engine is the heart, the wiring is the nervous system. The Continental GT's wiring harness is massive, about 100 pounds of cables, nearly 5 miles of wiring, 2,300 circuits, and 92 electronic control units. All of that arrives on the line as a single, complex, endlessly branching assembly. It looks like someone took every charger and cable you own, braided them together, and multiplied them by 10. To install it, workers use a small crane to lift the harness into the bare aluminum shell of the car. Then the clock starts. They have around 9 minutes to route that entire system through the car, under the floor, up the pillars, across the roofline, into the dashboard area, around the rear, and into all the right connection points. 9 minutes sounds like a lot until you remember that missing or misplacing one plug could mean a dead sensor, a malfunctioning airbag, or an annoying buzz behind the dash. When it's done well, you never think about it. You press a button and things just work. Screen, seat, lights, exhaust valves, suspension modes. You're surrounded by technology, but you never see the arteries that make it all possible. That invisibility is the point. It's like a magic trick. The better it's done, the less you notice. Once the wiring is in and various subsystems are installed, the car moves toward its most symbolic moment, the marriage. Imagine the painted body shell of the Continental GT suspended above the line, gliding slowly forward. Below it, on a separate platform, sits the completed drivetrain, W12 engine transmission, axles, suspension components, exhaust, the entire mechanical skeleton. At the marriage station, the two parts are aligned and brought together. The body descends onto the drivetrain like a tailored suit being slipped over a mannequin. Technicians bolt everything together, connecting the physical and electronic systems so that the car becomes one cohesive whole. Somewhere after this point, Romeo and Juliet finally make their appearance. These are the only two robots allowed to have starring roles in the factory. Their task: apply a perfectly even bead of adhesive around the edge of the windscreen and rear glass. Why robots for this and not for everything else? Because consistency here is critical. The thickness and position of that adhesive can affect wind noise, waterproofing, and even structural rigidity. Human hands then place and press the glass into position, but Romeo and Juliet make sure the glue bed underneath is flawless every time. It's a tiny slice of automation in an ocean of handwork. From here, the Continental starts to look like itself. Doors are fitted and adjusted, bonnets and boot lids go on. Workers obsess over panel gaps, aligning everything so the lines are razor straight and the gaps are even all around. A badge might be only a few millimeters off, but if your eye catches it, the illusion of perfection breaks. So they nudge, adjust, and recheck until the car looks like it was carved from a single block. Inside, the furniture from the leather and wood shops is finally installed. Seats slide into rails. Door panels click into place. The veneered dashboard is connected, its electronic guts quietly linking into that maze of wiring. The steering wheel, yes, the fork-measured one, is bolted on and centered. Switchgear, knobs, vents, and screens go in, combining old-school physical controls with modern digital displays. Then, just when you think the car must be done, the most unforgiving phase begins: inspection and testing. Cars move into light tunnels where their paint and panel work are examined under intense illumination. Every tiny dust speck, every micro scratch, every ripple stands out brutally. Inspectors mark imperfections with stickers and notes. If something doesn't meet the standard, the car might be polished, resprayed, or in extreme cases, reworked much more deeply. It's not uncommon for a car that looks perfect to a normal person to be rejected for tiny flaws most people would never notice. There are also dynamic tests. The car might go on a rolling road where the wheels spin while the car stays stationary to check drivetrain behavior and calibrate systems. There can be water tests where the car is blasted to simulate heavy rain just to make sure no leaks sneak into the cabin. Inside, every button is pressed, every motor is run. Windows, locks, seats, sunroofs all go through their motions. If something feels off, the car goes back, not forward. All of this is happening in a place that has been building machines since before your grandparents were born. Crewe's factory has seen propeller engines, classic Bentleys, big Rolls-Royces, old-school coach-built bodies, and now ultra-modern Grand Tourers like the Continental GT. Through wars, economic crises, changes of ownership, and global shifts in technology, it has stayed alive by reinventing itself without losing its soul. Think about the numbers again. Around 4,000 people, about 11,000 cars per year. A typical mainstream factory might build that in a few days. Bentley takes that volume and spreads it over an entire year, deliberately. The goal isn't speed, it's control. Control over quality, over customization, over the feeling you get when you close the door and the outside world just stops. And as the industry moves toward electrification and new technologies, the Crewe factory is evolving too. The tools will change. The powertrains might shift away from W12 engines to hybrid or fully electric systems. But the core philosophy that a Bentley is something touched, judged, and signed off by human hands isn't going anywhere. The stitching will still be 4 millimeters apart. The veneers will still be book-matched. The wiring will still be wrestled into place in those frantic 9 minutes. But here's the twist. Even after all those inspections, tests, and sign-offs, Crewe still isn't done proving that a Continental GT is worthy of the badge on its nose. A big part of that final proof happens somewhere most owners never see: Bentley's own test facilities. Before a car is cleared for delivery, it doesn't just idle in a bay and roll gently onto a truck. It's driven properly. Test drivers take each car for around 14 miles on Bentley's private test track and nearby roads. They aren't joyriding, they're hunting. Hunting for rattles, weird vibrations, odd noises from the suspension, misaligned panels that whistle at speed, anything that breaks the illusion of a solid block of engineering. Inside the cabin, everything is turned off. No music, no phone calls, just driver, machine, and road. They listen to how the tires hum on the surface, how the mirrors slice the air, how the engine note builds and fades. If there's a buzz from a door card at a certain speed or a faint ticking from behind the dash when the car hits a bump, it gets logged. Back at the factory, those notes become action items. Someone in trim, someone in body, someone in electronics will get that feedback and make it disappear. On the track, the Continental GT is pushed well beyond what most owners will ever do. Acceleration runs, braking tests, hard cornering. The 6.0-liter W12's 626 horsepower isn't just a number on a brochure. It's verified, felt, and checked for smooth delivery. Gear shifts are monitored for hesitation. The air suspension is cycled through its modes to ensure the car can go from wafty grand tourer to tied-down cross-country missile at the touch of a button. Then there's the weather. In Britain, you don't need to invent rain. It's already there. But Bentley still uses controlled water tests. The freshly built Continental GT is subjected to a simulated downpour. Jets aimed at seals, glass, and panel gaps. It's like a mini storm in a controlled room. Sensors and inspectors check for leaks, fogging, and any hint that water has made it past the car's defenses. Only when it comes out of that artificial monsoon bone dry does it earn its place on the list of Bentleys ready to travel the world. Back on the finishing line, there's one final slow ritual that says everything about how Crewe thinks. A detail team spends hours on a car that's already finished. They polish the paint inside and out. They brush lint from carpets. They clean fingerprints off chrome and glass. They recheck the tiny Bentley logos on the wheel centers to make sure they're all aligned. Even the tire sidewalls are cleaned so the car looks perfect under showroom lights. So next time you see a Bentley Continental GT glide past, remember what's hidden underneath the shiny paint and quiet exhaust. There's a fire-breathing W12 with one person's name on it. There's a cabin stitched, sanded, lacquered, and polished by actual craftspeople who would recognize their work on site. There's a wiring harness that weighs as much as a person, threaded through the car like veins through a body. There's history in the bricks of the factory that built it, from World War II engines to modern Grand Tourers. You're not just seeing a luxury car, you're seeing 400 hours of concentrated human obsession. If you loved stepping inside the Crewe factory and seeing the real work behind a Bentley Continental GT, not just the showroom glam, but the fork-marked leather, the book-match veneers, the 9-minute wiring challenge, and Romeo and Juliet's tiny robotic love story, make sure you stick around. Hit subscribe, drop a comment telling me which part of the process surprised you the most, and share this with someone who thinks handmade is just a buzzword. In the next video, we'll pull back the curtain on another legendary factory and show you how some of the world's most extreme machines are actually built piece by piece.